Well, good afternoon, guys. It is still March 16th. Actually, I don't think I said what date it was on the other video, but it's March 16th and I'm still in Laguna Wilderness. But I'm going to be heading down from the valleys and hopefully we can see some more species that maybe grow in some of the cooler, shadier parts of the California floristic region. I mean, we'll still be in the chaparral here, and I'll talk about some of the species again, but hopefully you can see something very different. So let's just jump right in. Of course, firstly, you got a lot of the same stuff. Eriogonum fasiculatum, the California buckwheat, looking especially shrubby today. And the Acmispon glaber, also looking quite shrubby. I mean, I've seen it look really shrubby elsewhere on the trail, like insanely so. And Artemisia californica, the California sagebrush. Nice connection to the sort of steppe-like habitat of the Great Basin. Although who knows exactly what its closest relatives are. I mean, I'm sure some scientists do, but I'm not really sure. Let's get a closer look at the Acmispon glaber flowers. See the very clear pea family flower kind of look they got to them. So yeah, a lot of the same stuff is growing here. If you're wondering what the California sagebrush inflorescence looks like, this is some from last year, I believe. Looks somewhat similar to Artemisia tridentata, though not exactly the same, but quite similar altogether. But yeah, let's just keep going. Now here's another interesting plant I've been seeing around. I think this is Phacelia ramosissima, also known as the branching Phacelia. If there's a common name for Phacelia, I don't really know what it is, nor do I care. It's a very shrubby member of Phacelia. Most of the ones you see in Utah are definitely herbaceous, some quite tiny in fact. It's either way, it's a member of the family Boraginaceae. I think it's the Hydrophyloideae subfamily, if that's even a continuous subfamily. All I know is that in my Utah flora book, it's still considered a part of the family Hydrophylaceae, which has since been merged back into Boraginaceae. Hope it wasn't too much of a mouthful for you guys, but it does have these cool distinctive leaves that are, yeah, they're full. I think they're full on pinnately compound, not bipinnately, but not just serrated. Definitely, they go all the way down to the rachis, so to speak. Of course, most members of Boraginaceae are quite hairy. That's one of its calling cards. Although a lot of plants are quite hairy, it's definitely a really strong feature of the family. So yeah, interesting thing. Not blooming yet very clearly, but still a cool plant. I'm sure there's a lot of endemic Phacelias to California because a lot of the genera you find in Mountain West have just absolutely exploded in diversity throughout California. It's another good view of it. But yeah, let's carry on. I wonder if it will be more of a riparian species once we get down into the actual on the riverside. Another classic of the California flora, especially in the Mediterranean climate areas. I've been seeing a bit of here, but I think I especially will see more of once we get down to the valley. This is Marah macrocarpa, also known as Chilicothe or Manroot. It's a genus that is primarily endemic to California. This species seems to be most common and is found in sort of southern coastal California. But it's called Manroot because it has a large tuberous root from which it sends out vines each year. So it is a perennial, and the roots can be quite large, like up to like several hundred pounds in some cases. Like it's a whole big giant man underneath the ground, I guess. I don't know. But either way, that's what its leaves look like. It's a member of the family Cucurbitaceae, so it is of course a twining vine. And that's its inflorescence, which does have flowers that look a lot like those of other members of Cucurbitaceae, like pumpkins and similar. Very neat plant. It's really cool. And there's some species you can find, like there's one in Arizona. Some of them extend up into like Washington and Oregon. And I think one even gets into Idaho, but I really need to look into that. I don't know for sure. I said it in one of my last videos, but I still haven't looked it up, so I should get on top of that, but just don't quote me on it for now, I guess. Now here's another one. I'm pretty sure I'll see more alongside the river, but for now it's growing on a ridge, so it can clearly handle the dry chaparral pretty well. This is Rhamnus ilicifolia, at least I think it is. Some people consider Rhamnus ilicifolia a subspecies of Rhamnus crocea, but that one I think is thorny, and this one is, well, pretty friendly to the touch. Its leaves are kind of stiff and a little prickly, but I'm certainly not being hurt by it, so there's that. Anyways, I don't think I've talked about any species in the genus Rhamnus before, which is obviously the namesake of Rhamnaceae. I've talked about Ceanothus before, because there is a native Ceanothus to Utah. But California is definitely the hot spot, or the center of diversity for the genus Chilicothe, and I'm not sure about Rhamnus though, but I know a few other species here. What a tragedy must have happened right here. Maybe a bird just shed a bunch of feathers all at once. Did it even do that? I don't think so. One thing that is much more noticeable as I'm descending is the influence of aspect, or slope aspect, on vegetation, because on this north-facing slope, you see there's a lot more trees and large shrubs growing. Or at least so it seems to me. While on the south-facing slope here, we got a lot more of the Artemisia californica and Eriogonum fasiculatum. Actually, that one's a little harder to see, but we definitely got a lot more small shrubs growing because water is less available. When it falls, it evaporates more quickly. Of course, there's no snowfall here, so there's no snowpack to contend with, but any rain that falls on that side will evaporate a lot quicker, creating a more arid microclimate. That overall increases the diversity of species. There's several different kinds of biodiversity. There's like alpha diversity, and I think beta diversity. And then there's another one which I don't really care about too much, but alpha diversity is diversity over... Oh my gosh, there's just a rabbit bear. Wow, okay, that would have been a lot cooler than my stupid talk about biodiversity, but the diversity over small areas is a really important part of biodiversity, because even if say one particular area or microhabitat has less biodiversity than neighboring ones, they can overall increase the total biodiversity over large areas. So yeah, and this is what I was talking about. Right in front of me, we got a proper forest laid out, which I'll be hiking into soon. If this is what you guys are waiting for, I'm sorry I spent so much time talking about ridgeline stuff, but this should be the bulk of the video. So it might be a long video, but we'll see. So I just found some inflorescences of that Phacelia ramosissima. Let me tell you, it does look very braginaceous, just the way it's quite hairy and prickly, with a sort of curling shape as it unfolds. It's a little hard to see on these ones, but that's what's known as being scorpioid. Very typical of the family. But anyways, I'm in the forest now, and I knew it'd be here, but I didn't know it'd be so great. So let's talk about a few things. Firstly, this is the coast live oak, or Quecus agrifolia. There's like 20 different oak species in California, which is a fair amount. It's a good place for oak diversity, though not nearly as much as Mexico, which it's definitely the center of oak species diversity in the whole world. And there does seem to be maybe a bit of a continuation into California with this, but either way, this one's one of easy to identify because its leaves are very dark green, often a little prickly on the margins, and they sort of curve inward. That's really the main thing I look for, is that they curve inward like that. Hope that's clear enough for you guys, but like it almost forms like a little cup, like a little scoop. Very distinguishing feature of it. Now, of the, I think, about 20 species of oak in California, the majority of them are evergreen and don't really lose their leaves, at least not in the winter, because it's so warm here. You might as well just keep your leaves year round and not waste energy generating them each new year, though some plants here opt to do it anyways, or in the dry season they'll opt to do it because there is a significant dry season that's hard to grow in. What else? There's quite a few other things here. I believe this is Coyote Willow. Salix, something over, I can't remember which it is. But it does have a very classic willow inflorescence. This is catkin right here, which is very distinguishing. It can get quite tall. So I think those plants, those trees overhead the pathway are also the coyote willow. All right, let's carry on. Now I'm sure you guys are wondering, does California have a native rubus? In fact, it does, or actually several, but that's beside the point, because here we have one of them, Rubus ursinus, the trailing blackberry, which is a good name for it because it's definitely spreading and sprawling along the ground a lot. Of course, a lot of rubuses are rather vining like this, but this one in particular seems to do that quite a lot. So have trifoliate leaves as such, white stem, and it is indeed prickly to the touch. I'm not going to demonstrate that because that would be painful. But let's move on. I hope you guys can hear that bird. Yeah, of course the pioneer areas are because California is such a dry place, at least well, Southern California is in many parts. are going to have a lot of different species that are unique because, you know, it's a place where water is more available. In NorCal on the coast, riparian areas, though there are riparian adapted species, are less significant because you just get so much rain. And even these riparian areas almost certainly dry out in the summertime, but it gives moisture for a little bit longer in the year, which can really make the difference for some plants. Take a look at this big tree. It's never Quecus agrifolia, but it's just huge, like 4 feet across and must be several hundred years old. The way it just goes up and over with its branches, and they go back and touch the ground, creating this natural, like, enclosed space, like this natural auditorium, like it's almost like creating a place to have an audience with this tree. I don't know, I just think it's awesome. If Ents were real, this would definitely be an Ent. Like, I can see why people used to think that oak trees were sentient or something like that. I'm not entirely sure this one isn't. It just must be so old. Survived several wildfires, and I don't know, I guess that's just the power of growing alongside waterways. Another important plant here, this is Sambucus sorrelea, also known as the blue elderberry, which, if it sounds familiar, it's because it is. You see it a lot in the lower montane zone of the Wasatch Mountains, and apparently also in coastal southern California. I think some people consider it a subspecies of the black elderberry or a Mexican elderberry, which are maybe the same thing, but I don't like that. I think it should be a separate species, and maybe even this one be a separate species. I don't know, maybe it's not actually that different, but it surely seems to be growing differently here. I mean, this one looks like a pretty typical elderberry, but a lot of them grow like it's full on trees, and their leaves seem a bit smaller. That seems like pretty small for their leaves. You can see that they're still opposite like most elderberries are. But yeah, really interesting how a plant that grows in the Wasatch, and then also just in coastal California like this. Now, one thing I'm seeing along this river or dry wash are these trees that are leafless, or at least currently leafless and starting to leaf out. I'm not saying all of them are this species, but this one is definitely Platanus racemosa, also known as the California sycamore, or maybe just a western sycamore. I think there's also an Arizona one that may be considered the same species, at least by some authorities, but regardless, it's got very typical sycamore bark, that very peely stuff, looks like a London plane tree. And it's got very typical sycamore leaves, as you can see here. These palmately lobed, almost like sort of maple looking leaves, that are definitely pretty large. Like, that's my hand for comparison. Good sized leaf for sure. But they're just starting to leaf out again, which is a good thing. And right here, this scared me for a second, is another plant I'm hoping I can talk about. This is the California or Western poison oak, Toxicodendron diversalobium, just starting to leaf out. It's got trifoliate couldn't this be poison ivy? I know it's not, because poison ivy isn't found here. The western poison ivy you find in Utah, Toxicodendron Redberry, is absent from California, and they instead got this western poison oak growing all throughout it. Just as allergenic as the poison ivy, I believe. So no, western poison ivy also grows in the Midwest and in New England, so it's not fully western, but it doesn't grow in the south, which is where the more famous Toxicodendron radicans poison ivy grows. It actually does grow as a vining plant. This one, though, is just a small shrub, like Toxicodendron Redberry. I'm not going to get too close because I don't want to get any poison ivy. I was trying to immunize myself against it, but I'm taking a little break from that. Actually, what the heck? Tastes good. Okay, now here's another one I can't not talk about. This is Ribes speciosum, also known as the fuchsia-flowered currant. If you know what a fuchsia's flower looks like, it definitely looks a lot like this. So it's a very odd flower for a currant to have, but it definitely is. If you don't believe me, that's a currant. Check the spines right there. Looks really unfriendly. I would not want to have to grab this plant if I was falling. Now, there isn't that much else about it. It just seems like a really cool looking ribes. You can see its fruit starting to develop right there. Very interesting plant to just be growing right here in California. But there's a lot of cool things growing here. Well, it took me a second to find one, but here is a Salvia mellifera actually in bloom. Sorry, Salvia mellifera is a shrubby species of salvia you can find in the California chaparral. Remember Lamiaceae, but here it actually is in flower. Sorry, I talk about it more in the other video. Dang, I really need a macro lens so bad so I can get closer, but classic mint family flowers. Love the look of them. I love odd looking flowers, like the ones that are asymmetrical or at least zygomorphic, so they're not radially symmetric. Coolest thing to me. Yeah, the other salvia or major salvia you'll find around here is Salvia alpina, the white sage, which actually does look a bit white, while that one doesn't really look all that black. I guess its spent inflorescences look black, but that's really sort of beside the point. It's a genus with about 900 species in it, most of which are found in like Central and South America, though a few also wander into like California and the American Southwest and some other areas. And meanwhile, Viola also has some of its species, but yeah, important genus if you want to just know about plants in general. And the sage we eat is also a member of that genus, as are I think a few other herbs we like. These leaves smell really nice, by the way, so you know. And here's the actual river. Right over sandstone here. Wow, this really reminds me of when I was hiking here in Royal National Park in Sydney, because there was a lot of this kind of like, I think it's sandstone. It was definitely sandstone there, and then some like waterfalls over it, and just some really shrubby vegetation. I guess it's actually much more of a forest, but there were patches of what really seemed a lot like chaparral plants. You can hear that helicopter, so it's pretty loud to me. But anyways, might be wrapping this up soon, because I'm not sure what else I'm going to see. But what a great place. Now I guess I need one more species to round things out, but I don't even know what this one is. I thought it was a Vermontodendron for a while, but its leaves are different, so I think it's actually a Malacothamnus, most likely Malacothamnus fasciculatus, though I can't even be totally sure. It's a cool looking plant. It is a member of Malvaceae as well, though not the Bombacoideae subfamily, but a different one, probably just the main Malvaceae stem, whatever the main subfamily is, I don't know. I saw one of its flowers earlier, and it definitely looked very typical Malvaceous with the, fused stamens around the central pistil. But I think that might be the last one for now, so once again guys, thanks for watching. See you next time. I wish I could have made more chaparral videos or California coastal videos, but next time. And I'll next time come a lot more prepared with some more knowledge, so it'll be way better. Thank you. Well, I guess as is tradition, I need one more plant to talk about. So here is Baccharis salicifolia. So it's a willow leaf Baccharis. It is a member of Asteraceae, of course. It is a riparian plant, and its name is a reference to the fact that its leaves look like those of a willow, which is very interesting, that a plant would separately evolve to be riparian in its habitat and also have leaves that look like another famous riparian lineage, but I think it's just coincidental. Nevertheless, this is actually a fairly widespread one. I think you can find it in Utah as well, so not just coastal California, but cool plant. There's a Arroyo Willow.